Good morning, everyone. And again, on behalf of Observer Research Foundation, let me welcome you all for this very special session that we are hosting today with Global Health Strategies on empowering emerging economies and the G20 presidencies in a shifting global order. I think the title speaks for itself about the priorities that this session would entail and how we would be engaging on a range of issues around the three presidencies or the three nations that are today on the table. I think, Ambassador Shringla is going to speak after me on a range of issues that perhaps as the G20 Secretariat that he led, that he coordinated. So very briefly, let me touch upon three aspects of what I think as ORF, which had the T20 Secretariat. It was a very busy year for us, as it was almost as busy a year for us as a Think 20 Secretariat as it was for perhaps the G20 Secretariat. And in terms of ideations, in terms of ideas, in terms of convenings, in terms of publications, it's almost the range of issues that we tackled, the ideas that were brought to the table, the kind of convenings that happened. I think it led to perhaps one of the most invigorating set of conversations we have had on global governance at a time when the very idea of global governance is under question. And I think that perhaps makes India's presidency very special because we have had a range of discussions, a range of ideas on the table, which hopefully will be taken forward by our partners in Brazil and later on in South Africa to define the global governance agenda in ways that amplifies the voice of the global South, of the developing world, of the emerging countries, and looks beyond the binaries of North, South, East, West to craft a consensus on global governance that perhaps is needed at this particular point. And I think when you look at the world, when you look at the changing global order, when you look at the institutional infirmities that underlie this changing world order, you also then start looking at G20 as a very viable platform that brings, at this unique moment in global politics, some of the unique challenges as well as some of the unique opportunities that exist in crafting a new global governance agenda. So I think what India did in terms of how the global G20 was convened, it led not only to a discussion or to this a collective sense of responsibility by bringing to the table a whole host of issues that are required to be tackled at this particular point. And this report that will be released today underscores that commitment of how we have to move beyond some of the traditional boundaries that confine us rather than allow us to enhance our capacities to deliver at a global level as a collective. So I think that perhaps was one of the most striking parts of India's presidency, India's initiatives of bringing together a large part of the world and making sure that the global governance agenda, where the global South, where the emerging economies at the heart, is not lost in the brouhaha of fragmentation, in great power politics that we see being reflected in every aspect of international relations today. And what makes, as I said, what makes this particular moment very appealing, very interesting, is that the presidency will be with Brazil and then with South Africa for 2 consecutive years as we move forward, as India transfers the baton to Brazil. And that perhaps will also give the global governance agenda a new texture, which is very much needed at this particular point. So by and large, it has been a very interesting journey for India over the last year, and Ambassador Shringla will of course talk about it. But as I was reflecting, that it has also been a very interesting journey for ORF as an institution heading the T20 Secretariat, the Think 20 Secretariat, where if you look just at the numbers, it was quite staggering that we were able to publish close to 400 publications authored by more than 1,200 authors from 40 plus nations, and very interestingly, close to 50% of them were women. So I think it looks, if you look at the diversity, if you look at the inclusiveness of the ideas that were brought to the table, and if you look at the sensibilities and sensitivities of those who were bringing forth those ideas, there is a very stark difference in the way India has been able to ideate and conceptualize the whole journey of G20, and particularly India's presidency at the heart of it. And of course, in terms of convenings also, Again, Ambassador Shringla will talk about the G20 convenings, but even if you look at the T20 convenings, more than 60 events happened all across India, taking these conversations on foreign policy and global governance beyond Delhi to places like Mysuru or Shillong or Goa has been a remarkable journey, bringing new voices, new ideas to the table. So with that, let me hand the platform back to the MC to invite Ambassador Shringla for his remarks. Thank you so much.
Dr. Harsh Pant, Vice President of the ORF, Indira Beheraji, Vice President of Global Health Strategies, my colleague, Special Secretary Abhay Thakur, my senior colleagues who are present here, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, friends. And I'm very happy to see so many young people from different universities, scholars from universities in and around Delhi, and of course the ORF young and high-tech team that is backing us up. Namaskar and good morning. Well, let me start by felicitating both the ORF and the Global Health Strategies for producing this very insightful and timely report entitled Empowering Emerging Economies, G20 Presidencies in a Shifting World Order. And of course, both institutions have been integrally involved with the G20, with our G20 presidency. ORF, as Dr. Pant mentioned specifically, has played a very, very key role in our presidency as the chair of the Think 20, and I think it also reflects on our presidency that we've rarely had such an active Think 20 process with so many outcomes and so many different publications that go with that particular effort. And all of this, of course, needless to say, the work of all of the empowerment, the engagement groups and the working groups were a sort of the main factors that went into the success of our presidency and contributed to an outcome document that has been in many senses quite unique and unprecedented. And of course, we are looking forward to some very fruitful and insightful discussions in the following sessions, and we look forward to any valuable insights into what is already a remarkable report from all accounts. So India's G20 presidency, for all intents and purposes, has been a historic moment for us, of course, in India, but also perhaps for the international order at large. And of course, the ORF GHS report does examine and explore the four global South emerging economies, Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, who would be at the helm of the G20 agenda from 2022 to 2025. And this, as was pointed out, is the first time that three emerging economies would be part of the G20 Troika. And I'm not sure whether this sort of conjuncture would be repeated in the future, but certainly this is a unique conjuncture which I think we have to not only examine carefully in terms of what is being produced as part of this unique coming together of emerging economies, but also what it can actually contribute to the global order as we see it. And Prime Minister Modi has commented on this, and I'll just quote him. He says, for the first time in the history of the G20, the Troika is with the developing world. The Troika can amplify the voice of the developing world at a crucial time when there are increased tensions due to global geopolitics, unquote. So I think this is very relevant, that not only can the Troika contribute to bringing a different perspective to the global challenges of the day, but they can also, I think, contribute in many senses to, I would say, addressing some of the major conflicts that are with us today. Our own outcome document, as you notice in the geopolitical section, brought a very unique perspective It was a perspective that has been shared by all of our G20 colleagues, but the emphasis has been on the fact that dialogue and diplomacy are important in any conflict, that this was really not an era of war, and that countries needed to work together within the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in order to resolve the issues that are the most pressing issues and impact on the lives of people across the world. Well, the shift towards a more diverse and inclusive G20 leadership, of course, has the ability to foster greater inclusivity, equity, cooperation, and innovative approaches in tackling the world's most complex challenges. And of course, the unique experiences, I think this is important, the experiences and histories of countries in the global south, like India, offer a rich tapestry of perspectives and insights that are not only different, but invaluable in addressing the complex challenges and global issues of our time. India, for example, has a history of diverse cultural traditions, colonial struggles, a rapid journey from a colonial economy to a thriving democracy today with the stated objective of becoming a developed country by 2047, the fastest growing major economy in the world today. This journey has honed its ability to innovate and adapt as it finds creative solutions to numerous domestic challenges and international challenges. These experiences have instilled a deep understanding of the importance of resilience, sustainable development, and social equity. So in a world grappling with climate change, economic disparities, health crisis, and of course conflicts, such perspectives are not only advantageous but imperative. And the ORF GHS report, as I see, does recognize this, and I am quoting briefly from this. These 4 countries, I'm referring to the 4 countries, emerging economies, reflect in letter and spirit the true essence of the global south. A categorization that is more geopolitical than geographic, shaped by historical, economic, and political commonalities that coincidentally exhibit some cartographic coherence. Interconnectedness within the global south then is not merely political altruism, but also a pragmatic response to the shared impact of global issues on emerging economies and the collective strength they can offer in addressing these challenges, unquote. So, in a certain sense, it really summarizes what the 4 emerging economies, the major economies, bring to the table of the G20 and of course the global table. From our perspective, of course, I think we have tried to highlight the concerns and sentiments of the global south. You would recall that before we took on our presidency, we had the Voice of Global South Summit, which was chaired by our Prime Minister. It was attended by 125 developing countries across the world who shared with us their expectations of our presidency and their concerns of the way the global order was currently situated. We have been very assiduous in trying to address many of the issues, take up and articulate the concerns of the global south. And I think before our presidency is over, we will have another opportunity to consult with our friends from the global south and try and get a sort of sense from them as to how they saw the presidency and how perhaps we can work with our other partners in taking some of this forward. In many senses, we have left our indelible mark on the G20 process. We've also set a precedent, a remarkable precedent for others to follow. And of course, our democratic ethos, unwavering commitment to ambitious outcomes and visionary leadership have forged a path towards a new, inclusive, sustainable global order. And India has achieved in many senses what many believe to be impossible, sort of a bridge too far, considering the strong geopolitical divisions within the G20 itself. And in today's ideologically changed world, India united the G20, something that we see the UN is still not able to come together in providing guidance to the way conflicts can be dealt with. and we did so in ensuring that political differences did not hinder the more important issues of the day, which is socio-economic development. So, if you look at the outcomes, we had an 83-paragraph outcome document. Master Abhay Thakur, of course, in many senses has been very key and player in this outcome. But what is unique, I think, is that there are as many as 205, outcome points that emerge from this, and about 118, I would say, action points. In other words, it's been an action-oriented, decisive, and I would say, in many senses, inclusive outcome document, which is what the Prime Minister's vision had envisaged for our presidency. And I think it's important to point out that many of the outcomes that we achieved through our presidency really reflect the concerns of the global south. One example, a prime example, is the 7-year action plan to accelerate the SDG process, which we all know in the middle of this process is faltering due to COVID and geopolitical issues. But the 7-year plan, I think, has now not only been adopted under our presidency, but also mainstreamed into the United Nations agenda, and today will actually provide the blueprint for carrying forward the momentum that will sustain or rather take forward the SDG process. We also have the issues that really concern the global south. For example, food security. We have the Deccan High-Level Principles on Food Security, which the G20 membership agreed to. In a related sort of outcome, we have the Maharishi Initiative, which is the Millets and Other Ancient Grains International Research Initiative, which will bring countries together to work on this new superfood that the world can adopt. We are also very happy that we have the outcome that enables us to strengthen multilateral development banks, especially the World Bank. The Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable has been launched as part of this outcome. And climate change is important because it affects developing countries probably as much, if not more. There is a commitment by the developed world to provide $100 billion a year till 2025, which is again really a reiteration, but now a reiteration of that commitment which is recorded in the G20. Digital public infrastructure has been an important priority under our presidency, and the fact that the G20 has agreed to have a global digital public infrastructure repository. In other words, you will have a sort of a global stack of DPI which will be available for any country to access. This is open source DPI. So whether it is many of our own India stack DPI, CoWIN is a good example. The CoWIN platform through which we were able to administer over 2 billion vaccines was made available to the rest of the world through an open source system, and we will continue to put many of our DPI on that global repository. So the G20 will provide countries that want to avail of this DPI, and this will be made available so that countries that don't have at this point of time the necessary digital tools to empower their citizens through identity cards, through access to bank accounts, etc., will be able to do it, will be able to use DPI to get benefits directly to their citizens and so on and so forth. The One Future Alliance is also linked to that. And of course, the Financial Inclusion Action Plan. So how do we ensure that there is greater financial inclusion? The high-level principles for sustainable development I mentioned, of course, and the Chennai Declaration on the Blue Economy. The ocean's health is an important priority for us. So all of these, including, of course, the high principles for the lifestyle for sustainable development, which you do, many of us would know, is a vision that was first articulated by the Prime Minister when he mentioned that we need to lead sustainable lifestyles if we are able to achieve the goals that we set for ourselves through climate change. So I think all across the board we have come out with far-reaching, I think, outcomes that the global community will adopt and implement. And I think that is very important. While substantive outcomes are critical, Dr. Pant also mentioned the organizational aspect. I think the fact that 4 vibrant democracies and emerging economies will be at the helm of the G20 is important because we brought a change in the way multilateral meetings, plurilateral meetings like the G20 are hosted. In our case, of course, we took the G20 to the grassroots level through a process of Jan Bhagidari, and as a result, it became a people's movement. It changed from an event to a people's movement. I think that is very important, that every Indian citizen could identify with the G20, and our G20 logo became a national symbol. It became a brand that everybody could identify with. Indonesia made a similar endeavor in their presidency, taking the G20 to the grassroots levels and taking it to as many cities as possible. And the fact that we were able to provide as inclusive an approach, not only through our citizens, but also through taking the G20, as Dr. Pant pointed out, to 60 different cities in our country, hosting G20 meetings across the geographical boundaries of our country, I think has been, in many senses, a way to involve the people of our country, create stakeholders in that process of our G20 presidency, and take it away from a remote international meeting in Delhi to one that every citizen in India, as I said, could identify with. So inclusivity also comes in the way your membership is formed. We have tried to involve as many developing countries as possible, the highest representation from Africa, and the fact that we had the ability to welcome the African Union as a permanent member of the G20 is also an important part of that aspiration of the global south that we tend to embody. We have always believed in greater representation for the global south, and this is for us was a great achievement from our presidency. So all in all, I think we have striven or made every effort to make our presidency as inclusive as possible, but also far-reaching, outcome-oriented and decisive. And of course, I would like to say in closing, extend my heartfelt congratulations and grateful thanks to the Observer Research Foundation, to the Global Health Strategies for their outstanding work in producing this well-researched and analytical report. The insights contained in it and the discussions that follow undoubtedly will shape the information discourse. It's important to point out here that every initiative that a presidency takes, and our presidency really effectively amounted to 9 months because we held our summit in the month of September. We still have our presidency till the end of November. But in the 9 months we had, I would say, a very, very concentrated burst of activity that produced these outcomes. But many of these outcomes will need time to consolidate and to be implemented, and we look forward to our successive presidencies, particularly those of Brazil and South Africa, to take forward many of these initiatives to bring them to their logical conclusion. Thank you for your dedication to knowledge, understanding, and the betterment of our global community. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Before we get started, to launch the report that Mr. Pant just mentioned, may we have Ambassador Harshvardhan Shringla and Ambassador Thakur. Can I please request you, sirs, to join us on stage? Mr. Pant, could you as well come up on stage? Developed jointly by GHS and ORF, this report dives into the impact of the G20 presidencies of Indonesia and India around development issues such as global health architecture, food, agriculture, energy security, gender equity, and digital inclusion. Anjali Nair, Executive VP of GHS, I hope you're joining us as well. Great. We have everyone. Thank you so much. The report also recommends how Brazil and South Africa can ensure continuity by taking forward the development agenda during their respective presidencies so that we address all of these challenges in a continual manner.